Welcome to The Cleaning, a podcast about the Apple TV show Silo. This is our weekly look at how events in the television series compare to events in the books. This is our breakdown of Season 3, Episode 6, The Drive. Spoilers for both the TV show and the entire book series. If you haven't read the book series and watched up to Season 3, Episode 6, please skip away. We do not want to spoil you. This week, I plan to talk about show-only character Per Stensen. I thought their show has to introduce him. We're past the halfway point. They keep mentioning him. Obviously, this car is bringing them to Per Stensen. It has to be that. I can't wait to talk about show-only Per Stensen. And then Silo siloed and said, you know what? We're not going to have any new information until the absolute last moment. And so I guess I'll push my conversation about Per Stensen till next week. Because of that, this week's show versus book podcast, book versus show podcast, is going to focus on your feedback. And as I go through your feedback, I think there's some really fun things to talk about. And I'm going to push back on it. As I love to say, who cares what I think? I want to know what you think. So even though I'm going to be pushing back on comments and thoughts, it's just I have different thoughts and I want to see if you agree with those different thoughts or if you stick by your original thoughts. As always, please subscribe, please like, please go down in the YouTube comments and tell me your thoughts. If you're listening to the audio podcast, go to social media at PHQ. I want to hear from you. I'm also in this podcast going to talk about the Orla Kent missing critical supply storyline. It's not from these books at all. Are you, as a book reader, more fascinated by it because you can speculate? You generally know what's going on in the show based on these books, maybe not always based on the show, but Orla Kent feels brand new and you can speculate. I'll talk about your speculation, but the big thing is, as book readers, are we enjoying getting to join the show watchers and speculate on where is this story going? And then later, I'm going to push back with a crazy idea that I'm sure you'll think is ridiculous. I'm going to argue that at times one-dimensional characters are actually better for the story than three-dimensional characters. And I'm going to talk about how that applies to these books and the show. Again, it's my ideas. I want you to push back. And I'm going to go over your feedback. We've got great feedback speculating how the show will pivot back to the books, what's going to go on with Daniel and Helen. So much fun. So please join me on this crazy podcast as we dive in. As I've been doing the last couple of weeks, let's just dive in immediately to this episode, episode 6 of season 3, The Drive, and talk about what, if anything, comes from these books. The big thrust of the episode in Silo 18 is Juliet's efforts to facilitate a rescue of Jimmy, aka Solo, and the kids from Silo 17. And that is a big part of this third book, Dust. So for everybody, you've all read the books, you know that Juliet really doesn't appear in the second book. But in the third book, we cut back to immediately after she's back in the silo and elected mayor. Her first big mission is to get Solo and the kids. And so that's how this book opens. And so that's what this episode is really pointing towards. Of course, Camille doesn't exist in the book, so Juliet doesn't have to fight Camille to go rescue the kids. The algorithm in the books really doesn't get a say. The algorithm, and it's not called an algorithm in the books, and you know why, it's kind of more limited on what it can do and what it stops. And obviously the Troy character, which hasn't been introduced in the show, really kind of plays into that. So they're both kind of about the same thing. Hey, we got to rescue Solo and the kids. And so Juliet offers things that she doesn't have to offer in the books. She offers, hey, let's get the kids, and then you can drug them. Kind of an interesting twist. Juliet also offers to take the Forget-Me-Now copyright arrested development drugs herself. So that's kind of adding new complications to rescuing Solo and the kids in the third book. She has different complications about how she's doing it. She's doing it via drilling to Silo 17. The show is implying that they're going to make Patrick Kennedy and Lukas walk over to the other silo. I assume bring good heat tape so that she can get back. This will be interesting. How do you think it'll play out? Is the show going to kill show-only created character Patrick Kennedy? Would the show kill Lukas? Now, I have had so much feedback, And the feedback has kind of convinced me. Oh, Lukas learned something at that door at the bottom of the silo. Oh, Lukas was in the mines and he was doing interesting things in it. Lukas has been back now for, what, 4 solid episodes? He hasn't told us any of that stuff. So the show hasn't given Lukas cool things that he was doing when he was in the mines. The show hasn't given Lukas new information that we don't know. So the show could kill Lukas, right? What do you think? Go down in the comments and let me know. Shirley is pregnant with Knox's baby. Now, I've said this almost every podcast. Knox, by this point in the story, is dead. Shirley had a husband. He's dead. I gotta be honest, I don't remember Shirley being pregnant with her dead husband's kid. Is that from this book? I'll flip through and look and remind you at the end. I don't think so. I don't remember it if it is. Bernard is dead in the books. The vitamin D plus storyline on the show that, hey, Silo 18 is going to be given, everybody's going to be drinking the forget-me-not drugs. In the second book, Shift, there is an interesting section that's set in Silo 18, but in an earlier time frame, in that rebellion that the show keeps saying happened 140 years ago. The book Shift takes you into a character named Mission, and he goes through this journey where he has those forget-me-not drugs, and we see how it affects one person. And it's a pretty effective little kind of section of the book Shift. Is the show going there by having Camille actually poison the water supply? Or do you believe, as some people are speculating, that Camille is trying to fool the algorithm, and because she isn't doing the osmosis process, the forget-me-not drugs won't actually take to effect? What do you guys think? Let's keep going. I always mention Camille isn't a character in the books, so therefore the Sims family drama, not a thing. The Billings, Hanks, and Orla Kent critical supply mystery, not in the books. Orla Kent isn't a character in the books, while Hank and Billings are. And this theft of critical supply, I'll say it, I have become intrigued by it because I think the show could do some crazy things by it. I've suggested it, and it was the first thing that came to my mind. Other people have as well. Who in the world would steal grow lights? They're not like extra outlets where you could use them, right? You wouldn't think. The power drain in Silo 18, somebody'd be able to trace. So somebody's turning on a lot of extra lights here. So the natural thought is another silo's taking them. That is wildly different from anything that would happen in the books, but you could see how that could create incredible drama. So let's see where this storyline goes. The show has, really gruff, cursing, negative Ed Harwood as kind of the leader of the mines. The books have a character named Rafe. I think it's pronounced Rafe. Maybe it's Raph, R-A-P-H, Raph. He is described very similarly. They're both in the mines. They're both real pale. Ed Harwood has, the white hair. But Ed Harwood on the show seems like a SOB. Raph, or Rafe, however you pronounce it, in the books, he's kind of gruff too, but he's very helpful to Juliet and her mission to drill to the kids. So I don't see the immediate connection. What do you think? Is Ed Harwood going to end up being an okay dude and a bit like Raph in the books? Let me know. Finally, we've got Daniel and Helen and their story trapped in the self-driving minivan. That is certainly not from the books. As I kind of said on last week's Book versus Show podcast, the Daniel storyline in Shift, before the horrific fate that befalls Daniel/Donald in the books, it's not really sci-fi at all. It's a lot of, hey, I went to this meeting went long, oh no, I'm being trapped in this meeting with my ex, I need to get home to my wife. It's kind of more domestic kind of problems as opposed, and work kind of problems. Oh boy, I got to work late on this project again, rather than the sci-fi trappings. So the show, by having what you assume is these evil nanos being able to take control of technology and drive a car where they want it to, that's a show, I suppose, trying to show rather than tell. What did you guys think of this storyline? It gets to Senator Thurman saying, hey, how would you like to help me solve the problems of the world? And this, I think, goes to kind of what I've always said since season 1 is the big difference between the show and the books. The show is just slow and doesn't have an awesome pace. I made this bookmark in Shift, and I want to flip to it. It is page 10 of my copy of Shift, and it says, Senator Thurman is speaking to Donald/Daniel and says, I hope you're not too busy to work on something for me. Senator Thurman raised an eyebrow. So that's on page 10. It's the top of page 10 of my copy of the book. The book begins with Daniel, being pulled into the Silo project. That's it. It's like, let's get on with it. That's where the interesting stuff is. The show takes all the way till the end of episode 6 of season 3 for Senator Thurman to get to this point. I'm trying to breathe in and breathe out. The books get on with it. One of the things I asked last week in the comments of YouTube, I was like, where do you guys think season 3 is going to end? And you guys gave me great answers. And I'll say where I think it's going to end is at what I like to call the Silo grand opening celebration day and the disaster that strikes then. Well, to give you an idea, again, that happens on page 154. Look at how much of the book is left. I've seen some critical comments about Hugh Howey's writing, but one thing that's not critical is he gets to it, like he goes, let's go. And you may think, what's funny is you think, maybe Troy's story takes a long time in the books because Troy's got to get his memory back or whatever. Compared to the show, it is not going at all. Like the show, as I just pointed out, has now reached page 10 of Shift after 6 episodes. It has just reached the point before the third book, Dust Begins, where Juliet has already agreed to go rescue Solo and the kids. Like that happens before this book even starts. A lot of people have said this, and this is one of the things I'm going to push back into feedback. People are like, well, the show has made a lot of changes, but it's true to the books. And yes, from one point of view, it is true to the books. But the fast-paced, let's get on with it part of the books, the show, even in season 1, was not true to that. The show likes it deliberate. I've said it a million times. The show wants like George Orwell 1984, oppressive, kind of slow, we are trapped in this fascist state. I push up against this because I love that the books had more of a pulse. Scott gave me this feedback. He said, you know what? You're a shill and your podcast is slow and boring. And then he wrote, JK. Thank you, Scott. I kind of feel like I am a bit of a fraud because I keep trying to talk about book versus the show, and they're not similar at all. Dominic gave me this great feedback who said, hey, I just wanted you to know that not every relic is a red level relic because you tend to call every single item that. This goes back, Dominic, I apologize. This goes back to the first season where red level relic, I could just not say it. I would stumble over it. I used to have this warm-up exercise they'd make us do where you'd say red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red. Like you say it as quick as you can because that really warms up your mouth. So I would try to say red level relic. I'd stumble and look like a fool, like I always look. And so that's why I call everything a red level relic. It's almost forcing me to become comfortable saying those words. Now let's turn to Critical Supply. And I said that, hey, as a book reader, do you like Critical Supply storyline, the missing Critical Supply storyline, because it allows you to speculate and do the fun stuff. Let me get to some of your feedback before I give you my thoughts. Christy said, I think the the light bulbs are being used in the mines. And Lukas is building a tunnel towards another silo. Christy, I don't feel it. I hope you're right. Henry wrote, someone is digging a tunnel. That could definitely be true, Henry. Tobe Wilson wrote, they're running an illegal tanning bed operation. I love somebody who snarks like I do. Just Smile said, I think the guy from the mines and his daughter are squirreling away the supplies and that they will become extremely valuable at some point. Surreal Nirvana said, Silo 1 took the supplies. Ooh, now that would be a wonderful twist. And Time's Ticking wrote, I surmise that Silo 18 miners found another silo via their mines, and those lamps are being used as a breakaway group to restart a dead silo's agriculture system. Ooh, again, these are fun ideas. The books don't have anything like this. And if you were going to raise the stakes and heighten the stakes from these books, one of the ways you could think about it is, okay, Juliet's got, and Silo 18, they have internal struggles. They have external struggles from Silo 1, but what else could we have them have? Well, a different silo declaring war on them and stealing their supplies? That is a great idea. That is a way you would think that you could raise and heighten the stakes. It feels like that's the only logical solution. Would you be okay with that? How is the story going for you? And I think it's interesting to ask because at the beginning, on our non-spoiler podcast, we'd always talk about, hey, do you care about Orla Kent? And at least on the feedback that we were given, a lot of people would say, I tune out. I'm bored. I skip it. My co-host, who has not read the final two books in the series, he would always say, yeah, I'll pay attention to Orla and the missing supplies when they become interesting. Have they become interesting? I think they have. I'll speak for myself. Now, in this episode where I had a lot of problems with it, speculating about where the supplies have gone has been the most interesting thing. That is a change from the books. And so as a book reader, I don't mind this change so far. Please, show, knock it out of the park. I hope you can. Let's continue talking about changes from the books. And here's some feedback I want to read. Wayne Rogers said, I was one of the book readers who really disliked the show this season, but around the third episode, I decided to try and set the book version aside and begin to appreciate the show as it is written. Thanks, Wayne. I hope you still feel that way. Jay Buford wrote, I generally disagree with the they threw out the books commentary. I think the showrunners have stayed remarkably faithful to the intent of the story while modernizing parts and finding a clever way to weave the before times into the present day narrative. Jay, I have a different take and I'm going to push back on that. So I want you to hopefully accept it with an open mind. I certainly think I'm glad you feel that way. But the last bit of feedback to get into this discussion is from 123JWJWJW, who wrote, the Bourne movie trilogy was accurate to the books for just a few scenes, meaning they're just, if you've seen those Jason Bourne movies, the Bourne Identity, the Bourne Supremacy, all those, the actual events in the book don't appear in the films. Like the films take the general idea of, hey, a assassin for the United States has been shot in the back of the head, lost his memories, and people try to kill him because they don't want his secrets out. He's trying to learn who he is. Like that is the one word, the pitch line, the elevator pitch of the Bourne Identity movies and Robert Ludlum's Bourne Identity novel, which I read and loved. But for the movies, they toss out a whole lot of parts of the Bourne Identity novel. And 123JWJWJW points that out and says, hey, they're seemingly doing a lot of that with Silo, but they're keeping the general idea. And this was Jay Buford's idea too, about the remaining faithful to the intent of the story. And what I wrote back, and this is just my own thought, imagine somebody was doing an adaptation of Peter Pan. And they said, you know what? Peter Pan, the real story is about a boy who wouldn't grow up. And Wendy, about how she was on the cusp of, hey, I'm not going to be a kid anymore. I need to grow up, and about that change in life. And so, yeah, you could change a whole lot. You could say, hey, let's not have it on an island. Let's have Neverland be a silo in the earth. You could make changes like that. But then say somebody said, you know what? The main antagonist, the main villain is Captain Hook. But I've decided in my adaptation, Captain Hook, they're going to be like a side antagonist. And the real antagonist in this Peter Pan adaptation is Admiral Per Stensen. Now, and Admiral Per Stensen is not angry at Peter Pan because he cut off his hand and fed it to a crocodile. Admiral Per Stensen is mad at Peter Pan because of some other reason, because he wants everybody to follow his edict on this is the way how things should be. That adaptation of Peter Pan could still be good. It still could be true about, hey, a boy doesn't want to grow up. Wendy is on the cusp, all those things. And yet, wouldn't you still think, who in the world would toss out Captain Hook to create their own antagonist? The Captain Hook is pretty good, right? He's fun. He fits the story pretty well. He's an adult male who's bitter at this youthful kid who has fun and can do all the things that he can't do. He's got to lead Shmi and the pirates. And so I hope that the show comes through. I hope the show really knocks it out of the park. But as far as changes being truthful to the source material, as far as changes in staying true to the intent, let's hope this is going to end up like the Bourne Identity movies and not like that really probably terrible version of Peter Pan I just described. What do you think? Go down in the comments and let me know. Let's get back to your feedback for a bit before I do more crazy ideas. And that is, on last week's Book versus Show, I mentioned the idea that people are pitching that Juliet is a descendant of Helen, or somebody in Silo 18 is a descendant of Helen and the Pez dispenser. In the trailer, there is this one image of Helen seemingly holding her belly and somebody helping her walk down the stairs. Now, I didn't think of it at the time until people on Reddit started saying, hey, is Helen pregnant? But Melanie gave me this feedback that said it would be cool if Juliet is a descendant, but it'd be very different from the books. Melanie, you're right. That would really be different. In the books, Helen is not pregnant, even though she later becomes pregnant in a silo from Mick Webb, the character who is not appearing in this TV show. Gab Z said, I think it makes more sense if Helen's eventual ancestor is George. Of course, he had the watch, right? What do you guys think? Are you excited about Helen being pregnant with Daniel's child? Let me know. Cars Surfer said, imagine if they flip it around and Helen be in Silo 1 and she's impersonating Senator Thurman and Daniel ends up in Silo 18 with his watch and the Pez. That would be a fun flip, Cars Surfer. The thing is that voice really does sound like Daniel. What do you think? Is the algorithm Daniel? It seems like there's no other option, right? And talking about this show being slow, I have too much feedback to read. I love all your feedback. I read all of it, but to read it out over the air is difficult. I started building up like, hey, here's pro show is fine and moving at a good pace, and people saying the amnesia is terrible, the pace is boring. And I would go back and forth. So like Carol Studio said, I think the show is very slow. Then Fournier said, season 3 has been excellent. Mojave Ghost says, amnesia's passive storyline and static instead of dynamic. While Sweezelski is saying, I'm liking where the show is going this season, actually. And let me say, Black Vi was on the pro side. Just Give Me Truth was on the pro side, but they were frustrated with filler. PGNN is really liking the show. Matt Gold is bored. Tony Allen is bored. Bigelow is bored. So the big thing I think the show obviously wants is all of us to be engaged. And I'm glad that about half of the feedback I've received is engaged. I just wish all of us, and including me, were as engaged. So we will see. I mentioned this at the very top of this podcast that I received so much feedback from people who say, Bernard in the books, he's a one-note, one-dimensional, two-bit villain. And Bernard Tim Robbins on the show is so much more well-rounded and so much better. They keep saying better. And number one, I'm not going to push back that Tim Robbins is not great and that the Bernard in the show has been more well-rounded. And we see his emotional ties to Judge Meadows and stuff. Like the Bernard in this book, you don't see any of that, right? He is one-dimensional villain. But right now, if it's okay, I'm going to argue why I actually think that worked better for the story that the book was trying to tell than the show. So let's talk about it. And I'm going to use something that theoretically a lot of people know. Apologies if you haven't seen it. I'm not saying Game of Thrones is the greatest show or greatest narrative structure ever told, but I think a lot of people have seen it. So when I use this as an example, everybody will be on the same page. There are characters on Game of Thrones that are, evil, you would call them, but they're kind of well-rounded. You understand where the evil comes from and how it kind of shaped them. And a character named Cersei, this evil queen, is kind of that well-rounded villainous character. Cersei kills a whole bunch of people, spoiler alert, and, she's villainous. There's also this character named Ramsay, who also kills a lot of people. He's really villainous and evil. But he's kind of one note. There's maybe one scene where you begin to see the emotion he has because he's a bastard and has been recognized by his father. But otherwise, Ramsay is just flat out evil, right? In the case of this character named Sansa, for one chunk of the story, she is under the thumb of Cersei. And in another chunk of the story, she is under the thumb of this character Ramsay. As an audience member, the well-rounded Cersei and her have a great, fun dynamic, and you enjoy Cersei taunting and torturing and just being mean to Sansa. In the other one, Ramsay tortures and is terrible to Sansa, but as an audience member, like, you're always on the edge of your seat. This psycho really could kill Sansa. This could be terrible. And that reaction you would never have with Cersei because you've shown, Cersei is calculated. She would only kill somebody where she sees it's an advantage to her. Ramsay, he'll kill anybody because he's, a one-dimensional crazy person. Similarly, in season 4, there's this hero, Jon Snow. He has 2 characters who want to kill him. One is named Ygritte, and one is called Styr. I don't even think they say Styr's name on the show. Ygritte is a well-rounded character. We know that she cared for Jon, and he totally betrayed her, and she keeps saying, I'm going to kill him, I'm going to kill him, I'm going to kill him. Styr is a one-dimensional cannibal who's so evil and comical. Like I said, I don't think the show ever says his name. But the audience reaction when Jon is up against these two is different. When Jon is up against the one-dimensional, this guy's just an insane cannibal, you have more fear. You're like, oh my God, oh gosh. And at times, that's what your stories need. When I watch season 3 of Silo and Camille is talking about killing somebody, I got to be honest, I don't see it. I don't see Camille really doing something cold-blooded as walking up to somebody and shooting them in the head, or even sending somebody out to clean. Like, I haven't seen it yet. They say she will do it, but I have a hard time seeing 3-dimensional Camille Sims do something truly evil to these people. While in season 1, Bernard, who we didn't know about his emotional ties to Judge Meadows and stuff, when he said he was going to send you out to clean and when Bernard was coming to get you, it's like, oh no, this is trouble. Run, 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 run. Because of that, I think one-dimensional Bernard works for me in this book. He is just a villain. There is like one scene before he dies where you do begin to see, oh, he's brainwashed, but he does do it because he thinks it's for the good of the silo. I wonder if, really well-rounded characters can get you to the fear that you would have for season 1 Bernard or evil, sniveling jerk book Bernard. What do you think? Am I crazy to say that at times one-dimensional characters can get you to a place that you want to go? You know what I ask you to do. Go down in the comments and tell me. Let's end this with a bit more feedback that I think gets to interesting ideas and thoughts. Always on YouTube wrote, when I was first listening to your podcast with your non-book reader host Catfish, I randomly remembered about Silo 40 and the sequel that Hugh Howey said he was going to write. This is one of those things that I've Googled and I haven't heard any more words about it. Hugh Howey is really out there promoting the show on social media, but I haven't seen him mention anything about, that proposed other book. And there are more short stories in the Silo world. Would the show go to those? And I'll be honest, I haven't read those. If you've read them, go down and tell me if any of the things the show has done tie into those short stories, or if you want the show to cover those short stories. I want to hear from you. So that's it for this Book versus Show podcast. Next week, even if the show pulls a Silo and still doesn't introduce Per Stensen, I'm going to talk about him. So give me your thoughts on what you think Colin Hanks is going to be doing. And I've already talked about it a bit on some of these. Does the show need an Elon Musk figure? Did it need another villain rather than everything really being focused on the two Thurmans? Reach out, tell me, and I'll talk to you next week.